In the 1930s, Australia faced an unlikely enemy, a foe that would prove surprisingly hard to defeat. This was no ordinary opponent. No, it was the emu, a large, flightless bird. And what followed was one of the most bizarre military campaigns in history, now known as the Great Emu War. Yes, Australia went to war with birds, and somehow the birds won. It all started in 1932, just after the Great Depression. Farmers in Western Australia had been promised government land to grow wheat, but when they started planting, a massive drought and falling wheat prices hit. The farmers struggled just to make ends meet. But then, things got even worse. By the end of the year, an estimated 20,000 emus began migrating inland, right through the wheat fields. Emus are huge, standing nearly 6 feet tall. They have powerful legs that can run 30 miles an hour, and they're incredibly tough. They trampled crops, tore down fences, and ate whatever wheat they could find. For the farmers, it was a disaster. Their already limited crops were being destroyed right before their eyes. Desperate, the farmers appealed to the government for help. They wanted military intervention. Their plea went all the way up to the Minister of Defense, Sir George Pearce. He agreed to send soldiers with machine guns. Yes, the government actually sent soldiers with machine guns to handle the emus. Armed with 2 Lewis machine guns and 10,000 rounds of ammunition, Major G.P.W. Meredith and his men were sent to Western Australia to take on the emus. The plan? Simple. Use the machine guns to mow down as many emus as possible, solving the farmers' problem once and for all. It sounded foolproof until the first battle. The soldiers' first encounter with the emus was a mess. They found a flock of 50 emus and opened fire. But the birds scattered quickly. The emus were fast, darting left and right in unpredictable directions. The soldiers only managed to kill a few birds before they were out of range. The emus had adapted immediately, and the machine guns just weren't effective against such a mobile, scattered target. Major Meredith and his men were stunned. They had expected the emus to be easy targets, but these birds seemed almost invincible. On November 4th, they tried again. This time they set up an ambush near a dam, where they expected large groups of emus to gather. They waited for hundreds of birds to appear, then opened fire. Once again, chaos ensued. The emus scattered, and the soldiers barely hit their targets. One of the guns even jammed. By the end of the day, despite hundreds of rounds fired, they had only killed a few dozen emus. The soldiers quickly realized that this would be much harder than they'd ever anticipated. Over the next few days, the emus seemed to outsmart the soldiers at every turn. They traveled in smaller groups, were nearly impossible to herd together, and adapted to the soldiers' tactics. Major Meredith later described the emus as like Zulu warriors for their speed and evasive skills. The soldiers were losing to birds, and it became a public spectacle. In total, the soldiers only managed to kill about 1,000 emus out of the 20,000 wreaking havoc. By mid-December, the government had given up entirely on the idea of using soldiers to combat the emus. They'd spent money, used precious resources, and had nothing to show for it. The emus had won. The Great Emu War became one of history's most bizarre military campaigns, a reminder of how even the most well-equipped army can't always conquer nature. In the end, the government eventually turned to other, more practical methods to help farmers protect their crops, such as building better fences. But the story of the Great Emu War lives on, a strange, amusing chapter in Australia's history that proves just how resilient nature can be. Subscribe for more surprising stories from history.